Today's video is about making a mouse droid from Star Wars with a twist. This little guy was famously frightened by Chewbacca in the first movie. The twist that I'm doing with this particular droid is that it is infested with a Dianoga. And for those of you that don't know what a Dianoga is, it's the creature that was in the trash compactor in the first Star Wars film. This particular droid is a great starter droid for droid building, getting your kind of dipping your toe into it, if you will. There is a forum online, there is a Facebook group for mouse droid builders, and I'll leave a link in the description about how to get involved and where to go to find the parts and things. It's a great place to, see build logs, see what other people have done, and there's just so much information there. So, the focus of my build today is not really going to be about just this mouse droid. It's really going to focus on the areas outside of kind of the traditional mouse droid building. Yeah, if you're interested in building a mouse, then definitely head over to those links and you'll find some really great stuff. Like I said, we're going to be focusing on the areas that deviate from the kind of traditional mouse droid. So let's go ahead and get into the build.
The chassis is going to be the first thing you're going to need when creating this droid. It's a car part, really. This is a 1/10 scale replica of a RC car that was around back in the day and was created by the club. The shell is the next integral part of this whole droid build. This shell is a styrene vacuum-formed shell. I used 1/2 inch by 2 inch poplar for the wood frame for the shells. Then I cut the lower shell to accommodate the chassis. I used standoffs to get the right ride height for the car. Installed magnets and pins to keep the top half attached to the lower half. The front bumper is a combination of a piece of wood and plastic square stock. It's attached to both the chassis and the lower shell. I used the same square stock for the frame that will become the Dianoga tank. Cut out the top of the shell for the door. The door is the piece I removed from that shell. The bottom and sides are thin layers of styrene. Aluminum aircraft hinges for the door. Servos mounted to the back of the tank, and I added a switch. There's a number of ways to make the upper greeblies. I chose this metal kit that was offered as a part run, but you can 3D print this part or fabricate it out of styrene. Temporarily installed the linear actuator to ensure there is enough clearance for everything, with the door opening and closing. The computer boards were part of a run as well, and I just needed to buy the chips and sockets to make it look authentic. The lower and upper shells are bondoed to fill in any gaps and wood grain. All greebly parts are attached with the correct flathead screws. Added styrene tubes and old circuit boards inside the frame of the tank just for interest. Flat sheets of styrene made the door more interesting. Now just primed and painted the droid inside and out. Wiring all of the components was a little tricky as there was far less room with the Dianoga tank in place. Then painted and detailed the inside of the tank. Whew, that's the whole droid. Okay, so that's the fully assembled car, or fully assembled droid. And now we can move on to the Dianoga. For the Dianoga, I started with a sculpture. A metal armature and water-based clay are used to create the character. I ended up doing a quick stone mold so that I could create the animatronics inside. The process of making this mold and then open the mold, take out the clay and the metal armature and leave a thin layer of clay inside. The mold then gets reclosed and a core mold is poured inside of it. Basically the clay is representing what will be the skin. Then you open that mold and you're able to make a mold of that mold, and then you can create your animatronic armature. Also with the core mold and the outer mold, you can make all of your skins. And in this case, I was planning to use foam, or I did use foam latex. However, there was a bit of an issue with this whole thing. As I got into the animatronics and got into doing it all, I kind of really ran out of room. I didn't really plan out the servos as best I could, and it really was frustrating for me. So I went back and I was going to recore the mold, but I actually decided to start the process over again. I knew the basic size I needed, so I chose to design the animatronics first as a 3D model. Once I got the shape and the desired size, I then made a solid version of the Dianoga skull and used that as my armature. I ended up molding it so that I could use it for the skins as well, but that became the basis for the sculpture. Then I sculpted basically, this time all in oil-based clay as opposed to a water-based clay. It gave me more time. It also was a little bit more durable, so I could separate the tentacles and make them, mold them separately and make the overall body mold a little bit easier to make. I also decided in this new version that the skin would be silicone. My first test with the foam latex skin really didn't, it was really hard on the skins, and I want a silicone skin which is generally more durable than the foam latex. Because I'm choosing silicone, I'm going to have to make an epoxy mold. And this here is a time lapse of just one part of that mold. The main body was 3 parts and the extra tentacles were a 2-piece mold. So needed to make that mold a little bit more durable. Here are the molds laid out with the clay from the sculpture set aside so I would know how much silicone I would need. I sprayed the molds with an encapsulator for the skin and then filled the molds with silicone. I ended up with several skins with varying amounts of squishiness, more deadener in this case in the mix, and the more soft the skin would be. So I played around with the amounts for each skin. After cleaning up the skins, I could use a silicone glue to reattach the tentacles. Then, quick paint job to get that Dianoga look. And here is my first test of the animatronics inside the droid. The eye is not even attached properly. It's just, I just wanted to see if everything was working. And this is a good representation of how the thing would move. The eyelid fits into the main skull with pegs and designed basically so it wouldn't need a screw or anything protruding from it. The eyelid will be visible, so it needs to be sanded smooth. Painted up the lid to match the skin here. The eyeball servo attaches inside the main skull and directly to the eyeball. Only one screw secures it to the skull. The blink servo tucks right behind the eye servo. I 3D modeled the servos to ensure everything fits together. The servo is connected to the eyelid with a metal linkage. A portion of the skull locks that servo into place. It's kind of like a little lid. It just slips right on top and holds the servo down. The back end of the skull has a servo mounted upside down, so the servo horn can attach to the linear actuator. The other servo is mounted above it and controls the head tilt. In the process of installing it in the skin, there was a weak point in one of the forks, so I ended up redesigning the skull a little bit and strengthening it. The new skull has reinforced forks, and I increased the wall thickness for added strength. Here you can clearly see the servo that tilts the head, and the mechanics simply slide into the skin from below.
I'd like to talk about the animatronic for a moment. Right now, you will notice that the eye is going to be moving this whole time, as well as the eyelid will blink every now and again. Those two functions are controlled by the Maestro board. It's a 6-channel Maestro board created by Pololu, and it's a beautiful board, really works extraordinarily well. And makes it very, very easy to add animations and servo movements and servo routines, performances, all that kind of stuff. You should really check out that website to check out the Maestro because it's cool. It's not a commercial for Maestro at all, but I like the board. The head itself will look up and down. It of course will come up and out of go up and go down inside of the body of the mouse droid. And then of course it will look right and it will look left. So it gives you I have control when I'm dealing with the remote. I have control of the robot itself with the right stick. The right stick also controls the wheels in terms of their movement. And then of course the drive forward and backwards. And then the left stick controls the Dianoga itself. So I can kind of look around, and the eye and eyelid are going to be more of a random motion, although it's pre-programmed to do a specific routine. And so there are 4 servos inside of the head. One's right behind the eyeball, one is operating the blink mechanism. There's a servo here in the middle of the body that lifts the head up and down, and then there's a servo here towards the back of the body that turns the head left and right. The other thing I'd like to point out on this particular thing is that there's a couple other functions here. So first of all, on the remote, like I said, right stick controls the droid or the robot. The left stick controls the head. I can also, with this button right here, do a nodding effect. So let's just turn the head here a little bit. And so I can get the Dianoga to nod. So give a little bit of an affirmative if somebody was to ask it a question. Kind of would you like candy? That kind of thing. And then the other part of this is that the lift mechanism on the robot is here. There is a 3-position switch here that allows me to go halfway down so the Dianoga looks like it's maybe peeking out, or hiding right before it goes in, or if it gets scared or something like that. And then if I go all the way down, or the 3rd position of the switch, it goes all the way into the cavity. I'm still able to move and position and nod and do all that stuff inside of the cavity. But I have a switch here that disables the Dianoga. That way I can't be banging the the animatronic all around in the inside the space with, when everything's closed up. And the last thing is this little switch right here that can open and close the door.